I'm Sophia Lofersky. I work at Upper School and I work at the Ethan D. Schaefer Center for Learning Differences. My title at Lawrence is Director of Academic Technology and Learning Support. Um, in our realm, that means a little bit of classroom technology, but mostly assistive technology that we're going to be reviewing today.
And I am Jason Stepsy. I'm the technology director and the art teacher at our lower school. So welcome everyone. We'll go ahead and get started right into assistive tech tools. So thank you all for joining us. And really this is about looking into what are assistive tech tools and how do we integrate that here at Lawrence. So let's start off by talking about what exactly is an assistive tech tool. These are really tools that students use to complete specific tasks throughout their day and within our learning environment. But more importantly, it's about enhancing learning for our students. They really capitalize on student strengths, and we try to bypass or compensate for any student challenges. This is really about empowering our students so that their work is done more efficiently and so that their work is done more independently.
So some tools that we use here, while we might use specific software here on our screen, you can see we've got a tablet with a puzzle piece and RW on it. That's our read and write for Google or read and write for Windows. On the right-hand side, we have a phone image of Learning Ally, which most of our students have access to and use regularly. If not, we're going to tell you a little bit about it today. But assistive technology tools also go into the realm that maybe we don't think of them as assistive technology, but your glasses, like my glasses, I have to wear them when I'm driving. They are a piece of assistive technology. Headphones are a piece of assistive technology. Microphones, amplifiers, smartphones, smart home technology, Alexa, anything you use that makes completing daily tasks, whether that's vocational or educational or otherwise, makes it easier. It's a piece of assistive tech, and it doesn't have to be electronic for it to be valuable.
So I love this picture here. So talking about assistive tech and its value, it's a great example of how fair doesn't necessarily mean that each person gets exactly the same thing, that everything is equal. So when we differentiate based on what a student needs to succeed, really get rid of that whole one size fits all mentality in school. We realize that when we provide AT tools across the board to everyone, we're really empowering every student to learn in the way that is best for them. And that really is key. So if you see in that picture, it's getting what you need so that you can succeed. Let's talk about connections between the lower and the upper school. So to that point about success and making sure everybody gets what they need on both campuses, we work really hard to make sure that we destigmatize this idea of using these tools. And we train teachers and students alike so that everyone has access to the tools. No one feels singled out. These AT tools are thoughtfully implemented across the board, K to 12. And over the course of a student's time here at Lawrence, they continually build up this toolbox of AT tools at their disposal, again, so they can use the right task at any given time or the right tool, I should say, at any given time to complete the task at hand. In terms of the technology we do use by campus, our youngest students start off with iPads. They transition to Chromebooks in the middle there in our upper elementary and our middle school, and they move to a Windows laptop in high school. Again, all the while they're building up their tool set. And even kids on an iPad or students on iPads, for example, they're using AT tools like Read and Write for iPad and Google Classroom. They build on that tool set throughout their time here at Lawrence. So talking about training and support at lower school. Training at lower school really does consist of in-class training with me. It's teacher-led training and videos that I create that teachers will play and then pause so that the students really do learn the ins and outs of these specific tools. Any specific concept we can review and reinforce in the student's computer specials class as well.
Upper school, while we don't have a computer specials class titled the same way that lower school does, we do offer different computer classes, and we require our middle school students to take middle school assistive technology targeted intervention, so MSATTI. If you're a new student and you are enrolling with us, you will probably either take that the first quarter of your seventh grade year or your eighth grade year. If you're transitioning from lower school to upper school, you will take that your first semester of seventh grade year. And if you are joining us in high school, that training will be a part of our ninth grade learning strategies, 10th grade learning strategies, or beyond. We try to have our students take the middle school targeted intervention for technology and learning strategies because they kind of scaffold and they work really well together. So in middle school, we're learning access and intention for the tools. And then once we get into the high school, we're learning how this integrates with my study skills, my specific learning style, and how do I advocate for what I need. On the training side for staff, we do PD days. We offer certification programs through some of our vendors, which is really nice. And we also do Tech Help Tuesdays that Sally Garza, our IT director at the upper school, facilitates in partnership with the rest of our tech team. So reading, we use a bunch of different reading tools. One that we use across the campuses is Read and Write. Read and Write is by Text Help, which is a company out of Ireland. It's a fantastic company. The tool is designed specifically for students with text-based learning differences. So some of the pieces of Read and Write were designed specifically with students who have dyslexia in mind. We use Read and Write for Google, Windows, and iPad. I'm sure you've seen your students looking at it, playing around with it. A lot of our students use it to listen to text first. This is an example of what Read and Write might look like for your students. So this is a student interacting with a PDF. At the very top left of the screen, you can see there's a hand with an arrow on it. Anywhere the student points on that screen, it will read whatever's under the hand to them, sentence by sentence. If they hit the play button, which is grayed out in this picture, it will play wherever they click or play from the start of the top of the page. They can pause, they can stop, they can review, highlight, look up definitions. It's a wonderful reading tool. We also use Fluency Tutor at upper school, primarily in the middle school. This is a way for our learning specialists to not only collect data, but reinforce some reading fluency skills that they're teaching our students in targeted intervention times.
So here I want to talk a little bit about different methods where students can go ahead and listen to either audiobooks that have visible text or text-to-speech accommodations for books. So what really does this accomplish when someone is having something read to them and then they can follow that along? Really what the program is doing, and we'll talk about these three programs, it's decoding for the student. So decoding is really just applying what you know to pronounce words correctly. And by doing this for the student, it it sort of arguably frees up the most important part of reading for the student, which is comprehension. So comprehension is reading for understanding. So that means now that the student can read for understanding, they can access grade level text and content. They can access grade level vocabulary. Tools like Bookshare, Learning Ally, and the scanning that we do internally allows the student to listen to the text, follow along with their eyes. It's multi-sensory. They're listening. And keep in mind, reading with your ears, reading while you're listening is just as valid as reading with your eyes. So starting off on the left is Bookshare. It's a free service if students qualify. And what it does, it provides ebooks or digitized text that can be read by a text reader.
Learning Ally right there in the middle column, that's a paid service. It also requires that you qualify in order to use it. It's primarily used by students in grades 6 through 12, so you can purchase after graduation. If you want to continue using it, you can purchase membership. This provides human-read audio. So Learning Ally differs from Bookshare in that you don't need a text reader in addition to the Learning Ally software. And Learning Ally is kind of like an audiobook. The files that they have a lot of the times are voice text files. And what that means is the text will be highlighted as the human voice is reading each sentence. The books are read by volunteers, and it's really, really well received by our students. It's very popular in middle school. Right now, we actually have the Learning Ally Great Reading Games going on. And the child of one of the people on this call is doing shockingly well and is in middle school and is beating out almost our whole high school population for reading. So go team.
And then finally, on the right hand side there, we have our DBL, which is the digital book library. So what we do internally is we'll break a book down, we'll scan that textbook or a chapter book, and then we'll turn that into a PDF that also has information on it, so that the a text reader can read that. So just like books with Bookshare or an ebook, you can have that read to you. You can follow along with your eyes. Unfortunately, just like with Bookshare, it is that computer voice. Learning Ally does have the benefit of, as Sophia said, that nice natural human voice.
Yeah. And even though the computer voice is there for two of these resources, as the students get older, it really doesn't bother them. We try to have the teachers model, and we offer training for that as well, so that even if Learning Ally and having your mom or dad or a teacher read to you is what's most comfortable in elementary school, as you get older, you kind of train yourself to look for the meaning of the words, like Jason said earlier, rather than focusing on the intonation and the inflection. And our students learn to add that in their own minds throughout the years. One other good piece of information about this for our digital book library, Bookshare, and Learning Ally is that our students learn to annotate digital books. This is slowly taught and integrated at upper school on all three of these platforms. And if you ever have any more questions about it, please let me know, and I'm happy to send you examples.
So before we move on from reading to writing, I do want to mention Nessie. We use this at lower school. It's a subscription service. It's basically used as a supplement and a review for code breakers for those concepts for reading and spelling. It's done in an individualized way. So basically what happens is the student will do this Nessie program for a certain amount of time. And what it does is it aligns with the Lawrence reading instruction structure. It's systematic, it's Orton Gillingham based, and it's structured. So getting into writing. So whether we're on an iPad, a Chromebook, or a Windows laptop based on level, our students have access to the text help read and write. So just like we use this for text to speech, we can use this for dictation, which is speech to text. Dictation is also built into the iPad operating system. If anybody's used Siri, you understand how that works. Dictation is also built directly into Chrome and Google Docs as a tool called voice typing. So one of the things we do across the board is we show students the accessibility of similar tools. So you can get to that speech tool there. You can also get to that tool through voice typing in the Google Doc. That way, again, they're building that repertoire of tools, and they can use what works best for them.
There are other tools in here for editing. So one of my favorite examples that we use is called the Check It tool. It's circled in red on the top left-hand side of the screen. The Check It tool was designed to work with students with text-based learning differences because this is from Read and Write. So it will recognize the way that students might try to sound out words when they're typing, especially if you have a learning difference like dyslexia. And a lot of times it catches those errors better than the spell check in Microsoft or the spell check in Google, which is getting better. Google works really closely with them. But it's a fantastic tool for our students. We also have other tools on here for annotation, as I mentioned earlier, and those can be used within a student's own writing.
Another helpful writing tool is a graphic organizer. It's a powerful pre-writing tool. It's going to allow students to organize their thoughts, plan out for their writing, get their facts sort of aligned so that when they're writing, it all is cohesive and makes sense. At lower school, we use something called MimeUp. Upper school uses MindMeister and Inspiration. So what does each campus do for the writing process? Starting at the lower school, we use something called Framing Your Thoughts, which uses symbols to represent the parts of a sentence, and along the way, students learn how those parts work. Also, lower school uses something called Step into Writing, which provides a multi-sensory strategy for doing things on a slightly higher level. So we're doing things like organizing, writing, and doing things like essays.
At upper school, we use Power Up and some teachers use Meal. These are two different ways to get through the writing process. So, Power Up stands for prepare, organize, write, edit, revise, understand, and publish. And Meal stands for main idea, evidence, analysis, and link.
So, in terms of typing skills, we begin working on typing skills very early on with our students, really to build up speed and accuracy over time. That will help students sort of put their focus on the task at hand and not worry so much about something that can end up being automatic, like the typing. So, our youngest students on their iPads are using little Bluetooth keyboards. They're using a program called Typing Club, and they continue to use that Typing Club program through sixth grade. Upper school continues typing skill practice with a program called Typing Pal.
Mhm.
So let's talk a little bit about tools that help with organization with executive function skills. So we're talking about things that deal with planning and remembering and sort of jungling day-to-day tasks. At lower school, any lower school parents that are familiar with the assignment notebook, it's that physical paper notebook where teachers and students will work together and put their homework in there, and parents can review that with them. And students move through the lower school, they become more familiar with Google Classroom. And we'll talk about that a little bit later, but Google Classroom has an upcoming spotlight, which really sort of cues our students into work that is due next so they can start to prioritize.
And at upper school, we still have assignment notebooks available to our students. We do ask all of our middle school students, freshmen and sophomores, to use their Google Keeps or their assignment notebooks before they move on to something like Google Keep or Google Calendar. So our middle school students and high school students are all trained in Google Calendar, and then select students are trained in Google Keep once they get to be junior and senior year, when they have more options and learning strategies to say, you know what, I really want to try some other form of organization that I think might work best for me. Sometimes that might be on their smartphones or on a different paper assignment planner. We also have options like Things 3. I believe I only have a couple kids using Things 3 right now, which is a third party organizer app on your phone. And then we also have students who prefer to use a Google Doc with a grid, and they have one large document and they just keep making copies of the pages. And it's formatted very similarly to the assignment notebook, but it's all digital. So they can format things the same way they would on paper in their Google Drive.
In terms of grades at lower, students do not have access to their grades at the lower school, but parents do have access through My Lawrence. They can look at conference reports, mid and end years. They can also look at Ames web graphs that cover both benchmarks and progress monitor.
At upper school, our students do have to fill out a daily planning sheet. And right now they're doing that in SLS, their supported learning. Usually they would do that in the LRC during something that would be like a study hall. So on their daily planning sheets, they have to do something specific each day, whether that is clear out their inbox, check their grades, email teachers for grades that they have questions about, organize their Google Drive, things like that. After they do that, part of the executive functioning related to grades is making sure that you learn how to prioritize your assignments that you have upcoming. So on that same daily planning sheet, they prioritize A, B, and C for things that need to be done this period, things that need to be done by the end of the day, things that are upcoming.
So, talking a little bit more about accessibility tools by campus, at the lower school, we use annotated PDFs on our iPads, which are the digital worksheets that students can write on. Our upper elementary group uses something called Discovery Education for their science and their social studies texts. We use IXL to review and reinforce both language and math concepts. We use the digital graph paper and a host of teacher-created digital worksheets accessible in Google Docs as a Google slide or an actual Google Doc. And we'll talk a little bit about G Suite in a little bit, but that's used on both campuses as well.
We use a lot of the same things at upper school, but in addition, we use OneNote in some of our upper level math and science courses in the high school. OneNote is used primarily by students who are using laptops, so grades 9 through 12. in advanced science where maybe handwriting is more efficient than typing or dictating. We're also slowly integrating another program called Equatio, which is kind of like read and write for math and science. So in Equatio, you can dictate pretty complicated math equations to the computer and it will write it with the proper symbols and format.
So believe it or not, on Wednesday, Google said that they're changing the name of this. It used to be Google Apps for Education. Now it's G Suite, or I should say it was G Suite. Now it is called Google Workspace for Education. Regardless, the tools are the same. Looking at the three tools here, let's start with Google Docs on the left. It really is sort of that word processing document. When you think of Microsoft Word or iWorks, it's really where the writing's done. So students can use Google Sheets or for their spreadsheet work, Google Slides for their presentations, or that regular Google Doc for something like a Word document. All Google Docs tend to colloquially be referred to as Google Docs, even though you've got your slides, your sheets, and your docs. The Google Drive, the one in the middle, really is where we save everything. It's that cloud-based storage, and most importantly, it saves automatically, which is excellent and very much well received for anyone who has issues with saving, anyone who has executive function issues. And finally, on the right, we've got Google Classroom. It really ties the Google Drive with the Google Docs. It's the way that the teachers can hand out assignments to students, collect them, comment on them. It's also where the students will initially see their assignments by class. And once they open up those assignments, they can access that back in Google Classroom or go directly to Google Drive to get the work that they've started. Google Classroom also allows communication between teachers and students in the announcements that are posted in each classroom.